We've heard from many industry leaders today. All have talked about how we unlock connectivity and connecting Britain. And really, as I say, unlocking that full potential of the UK's digital economy. And there's no question that we also heard a lot today, and I think we all understand the importance of the cost of living crisis that we're all currently experiencing, and the impact it's having on us as individuals, on our businesses, on our customers, and frankly, on delivering this UK potential. And this is where I'd like to start with today. Because we're acutely aware, from a business and a personal perspective, the impact it's having on us, and the price rises that we've all seen this year. The question for me is, in what is the role that telecoms can play in this crisis, and how can we frankly help? And I think everyone in this room intuitively understands that this crisis is part of a larger and bigger story, that there are many factors at play in the economic position we find ourselves in. The most obvious being Russia and the invasion of Ukraine. Clearly critical here is the devastating effects this is having on the Ukraine people. For us, the effect is energy price rises, food price rises. For example, we've all seen the dramatic rise of wheat prices in excess of over 25%, because as we all know, Ukraine is a major exporter of grain. Another factor, of course, is climate change. We've all experienced the increasingly severe weather, particularly in recent weeks and months. This has caused droughts in some parts of the world. This, of course, affects food production. In recent news, we heard, for example, the cooking oil shortage that's affecting the European Union, where actually sunflower harvest is going to dramatically fall this year, which in turn forces up prices for the cost of cooking oil, affecting a whole range of industries across Europe. But these droughts also affect electricity production, where dams are drying up. This means generating more electricity from coal, which in turn means more emissions, creating climate change impact. But you've all understood this, you've all seen the news around this, and you all understand that your businesses are therefore seeing huge cost increases. And these cost increases, we've had little choice but to pass these on to our customers. And so in that context, I'll turn to the UK. In Q1 of this year, over 1.5 million people cancelled video streaming here in the UK as consumers prioritise household budgets. Not only that, 89% of adults here have reported a dramatic increase in their cost of living expenses and are having to make difficult decisions on the back of that. And I think we'll all have seen the price rises in food. Here we cite the 5.2% that Nestlé raised their prices just in the first quarter of this year. And that is continuing as we look to the back end of this year. At the same time, tax and benefit changes are adding to the pressures on household incomes. 5.5 million low-income households will lose over 1,000 in income support this year. This is the biggest cut in income support since the foundation of the modern welfare. And we know even before the winter sets in, that 14% of families are already struggling to pay their utility bills. The Roundtree charity estimates that about 500,000 people, about 200,000 of which are children, will shortly fall into poverty. And perhaps worryingly, more than a third of these are already in work. The thread here is economics and the challenging economic system we find ourselves in. So what's the answer? What can telecoms do to help in this crisis? And at this point, I'm going to turn to horses. Too often in human nature, we focus on the things right in front of our faces, the technologies that we have today, the tangible things that are in front of our faces. As the saying goes, we often can't see the wood for the trees. So let me give you an example of that, a story about horse manure. Yes, horse manure. At the turn of the 20th century in the US, there were over 200,000 horses in New York City, one for every 17 people. And there was one major issue with this. That's right, the horse manure. It was just everywhere. And everywhere it was, it created a health and safety crisis. The city council set up a conference for 2 days to understand what they could do to address this problem. They discussed and deliberated. They brought in experts from across different industries. But they could simply come up with no answer to this problem. But as it happened, shortly afterwards, the answer appeared. Almost out of nowhere, a technical innovation solved their entire problem. The car. An innovation just not foreseen by the city council in any way. And too often, for us in human society, if we don't see that solution in front of our very eyes, we often assume there is no answer. And history has simply proved this assumption wrong time after time. In economics, this is known as a positive externality, an unforeseen positive outcome. And so my message here is that as we invest in the telecom future, networks of the future, as we launch 5G, we roll out more fiber, we build new cloud services, we must remind ourselves to be optimistic about the future. We must remind ourselves that the innovation investment we are making will lead to solutions we cannot yet imagine. And we must remind ourselves of the important role that we play as the telecom industry in creating the technology that, quite frankly, will change the world. So we must persevere in our ambition of delivering a connected Britain, striving to unlock the full potential of the UK's digital economy. We must continue to roll out fibre. It is the single infrastructure that underpins the telecoms industry. It plays such a crucial role, not just in ensuring we're connected at home, but also to connect enterprises, underpinning smart cities, and building the smart grids of the future. And so as we look to the consolidation we see coming in the UK, we must not slow down. And we must look to previous history when we think about the integration challenges that we had as an industry decades ago and ensure they are not repeated. I also hope we all understand in this room that 5G connectivity is one of the key enablers for the fourth industrial revolution. Brendan certainly alluded to it earlier. It's bridging the gap between the digital and physical infrastructures. The 5G-enabled industries have the potential to add $8 trillion to global GDP by 2030. And it is through these 5G-enabled industry transformations that we'll be able to address some of the world's most difficult challenges. In fact, it is the only way that we will be able to meet some of these challenges. And it is for us to lead, and I do mean lead, the industries and support the UK population as they go through this transition. It will be through digital transformation that we can deliver the productivity improvements, cost efficiencies, and transformative services that will help us get control of some of the crises like the price rises we're seeing at the moment. And as we say in Nokia, there is no green without digital. So how do we do this? How can we help? Well, let's take food price increases, for example. What if we could digitize a farm to ensure nothing was wasted? Currently, it's estimated that agriculture is responsible for up to 8.5% of all greenhouse gases globally. 14.5% of this comes from constant land use change. And emissions are further increased as crops are moved around, as produce is shipped, flown, driven thousands of kilometers before either they get to the farm or the shops and factories. Mitigation of these factors in agriculture is central to the solution for climate change. If agriculture and associated businesses can increase their yield and at the same time minimize waste and environmental damage, it will deliver at least 4 of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. So how do we do this? Well, in short, we make agriculture smarter. Using technologies like private networks, AI, machine learning, drone orchestration, we can monitor livestock and soil, deliver smart irrigation, deploy drones for crop management. And in fact, Bell Labs did this with AeroFarm in the US, using a system that images every plant, every day, allowing direct course correction as needed to ensure the highest level of quality and yield all year round for that farm. This is called precision farming. And in fact, Bell Labs predicts that if 25% of all farms adopted precision farming by 2030, it could lead to a yield increases of up to 300 million tons per year. I think that's worth repeating, 300 million tons per year. enabled by technology change. As I said, this is an agricultural example, but in fact we need to replicate this in every industry in the UK. Because when we do, the positive outcomes will be life-changing. CBI Director Tony Danker recently urged businesses to stick with their own net zero strategies while juggling increasing energy costs for suppliers and customers. He also urged government to back these critical technologies that support the world's decarbonisation in the decades ahead, even at this time of high inflation and challenging economic growth. Because if we don't do something now, we will continue to see such devastating reports, as you can see on this slide. So in closing, I want to leave you with 2 points. We must continue to accelerate the investment in these networks, in delivering fibre for the whole country, in delivering full coverage of 5G, and accelerating delivery of cloud services that will enable this world-changing technology. Accelerating this transformation together is pivotal. We need to do it together. As Brendan said, there is no one-stop shop here anymore. We must collaborate across industries, across technologists, across service providers, across system integrators, across niche providers in each of these verticals. This is the only way we can deliver this kind of change. But if we get it right, the impact will be dramatic. Secondly, we must remain optimistic about the future. We must put back into the box these doomsday merchants and naysayers that keep questioning the value of fibre deployment, that keep challenging where's the killer use case for 5G. As I said earlier, we don't know in some of these instances, but there is innovation coming. We can see the impact today through some examples that were given earlier and in things like agriculture, but there is more to come. As Steve Jobs said, innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity. There is change coming, and we need to lead. Thank you. So I think I'd like to welcome the panel to come and join me up on stage. And as they do, I will do a short introduction. So I'm delighted to welcome our other keynote speaker, Brendan O'Reilly, who, as I think you picked up, was a Group Technology Officer for BAI. I also welcome Conal Henry, Chairman of Fibrus. Conal Henry is the founder and chair of Fibrus. Before co-founding Fibrus, he was the CEO of eNet and led what is now known as MBI to become the winning bidder for the Irish broadband plan. And prior to that, Conal was commercial director at Ryanair and George Asda Clothing. Ashwini Bakshi, chief sales officer at STL. Ashwini is, as I said, the chief sales officer there with over 25 years of experience. Ashwini is an industry veteran and established thought leader and has previously held executive positions in Nokia and Ericsson. And also Elsa. Elsa is the chief commercial officer of CityFibre. Elsa leads the end-to-end customer experience strategy across all of CityFibre's verticals. With over 70 years of experience in UK wholesale, she is a well-respected leader in this industry, known for her passion in developing customer-centric culture and her approach to driving business performance. Let's welcome to the stage, please. Good afternoon, all. So I think you've got mics in front of you, one each, so I hope you're all good. So the panel we're talking about today is how do we deliver truly positive outcomes for our people of the UK? And I guess, again, the starting question for that as context is, well, what do we mean by a positive outcome? What does that mean for yourselves and our customers? Perhaps I could ask Elsa for you to kick off and give your context from a CityFibre perspective first.
Sure. So CityFibre being in a full fibre builder in the UK, obviously our mission and the ambition is to bring a full fibre benefit to the consumers and across the UK. At the moment, that is about a third of the population in the UK. And that, for us, the positive outcome is this true digital benefit can be unlocked. That means the network gets built, competition being kept alive and the fiber adoption actually happening. And that to us is really the biggest journey for us to get on to really truly unlocking the benefit and the positive outcome to the customer. And we talked about earlier in a session, our CEO Greg also talked about the investment we'll put into full fiber, that's about £4 billion. And based on the research we did in 2022, that itself can unlock about £38 billion of economic benefit over the 15 years period. That's just CityFibre alone. And therefore, the outcome, the positive outcome, will be able to unlock this properly by building the network and by having the customer moving onto the network.
Excellent, thank you. And perhaps you want to add to that, Ashwini?
Thank you. Yeah, sound check. So first of all, I think we have to be clear that in the immediate future, the positive outcome is affordable and high quality connectivity. So nothing happens if people do not have access to high quality broadband at the sort of speeds, the gigabit speeds that we've been talking about. But that is just the start. Even if it takes us 3 or 4 years to get there, we have to start asking already now, what downstream outcomes do we want to create? Learning outcomes, for example. Economic outcomes. People will start their own businesses, they will work from home, they want to create value for themselves, their families, their enterprises. Telehealth outcomes is yet another example of what this ubiquitous high-quality connectivity will enable, which in turn requires thinking about not just the technology that we are putting in, but the human being at the end of that chain. So all of us have a responsibility to work together for the customer, but also the customer's customer.
Yeah, you seen the same from your perspective in terms of particularly, I guess, unlocking the value from a fibre delivery point of view?
I mean, like Elsa said, you know, we're obviously deploying significant capital into the market. You know, our investment program in Northern Ireland's up over £500 million, and we're now moving to England. I suppose in terms of unlocking positive outcomes for people, you know, we're big on one level. We're a big company, but we're a small company, and we have to make sure that we stick to our piece of the job, which is to make sure that the service is there, that people actually get the service. What I think we should understand about ourselves as an industry is that supply is local and demand is global. So what people do with broadband around the world is pretty much the same, but how it gets delivered to people around the world is quite different. So our job is to provide the supply and let the market deal with the demand. So that's the first thing. What we can do is 3 things: availability, competition, and trust. So if we can provide people with high quality broadband, if we can provide people with a competition for the services, so in other words, most people, pretty much everybody in the UK will end up with 2 networks to choose from, and that's brilliant because that creates platform competition. So that's the next thing that makes sure that they aren't held hostage by their network provider, which we've seen before. And then the last thing is trust, and that's the thing that the industry that we're in is singularly failed to provide to their customers. When we say the price is the price, we don't change the price. When we say 100 meg, we mean 100 meg, and when we say fibre, we mean fibre.
Yeah, I think our last point on the fibre piece point. Do you think, though, actually, just to pick on that point around trust for a second, do you think that price rises that are coming from our industry are affecting that trust? Do you think that that is putting pressure on consumers in this space?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are, and I think, you know, one of the things that we have to do as an industry is ensure that we allow the rest of the industry to make fair returns. You know, the reason why I'm so passionate about the neutral host model is because it allows to build once, build efficiently, and everybody gets the benefit of it. So, you know, driving a really financially efficient model so that everybody can make a return is how you keep a industry thriving. Then it's about bridging the digital divide, you know, whether that be areas that don't have connectivity or private networks where, you know, you're going to help businesses grow and be sustainable. But I think price rises are something that the industry are concerned about. But there are models there that allow us to keep costs down, and we're beginning to see those come to the fore.
Do you see that? I might go off piece a little bit at this point, but I'm seeing this is a key topic, particularly when you talked about having competition, having 2 suppliers. I think we've all seen a massive investment, particularly in the UK, but in Ireland as well, as we roll out more fibre. But actually, overbuild's a worry, and overbuild serves nobody in terms of increasing the cost base. Do you think we've got the balance right in the UK right now in terms of being able to mitigate that risk to ensure we don't have to pass that cost on to customers?
So that's the thing about a market. The market will find its level. That's why you need competition. Yeah. So overbuild. There is too much overbuild, and you know the supply of high quality fibre networks is lumpy. Some people are getting too much, a large number of people aren't getting enough. The market will fix that. Some networks are going to not return to their investors, and that will deal with that. So in the long run, I don't think that's particularly consumer affecting. I think the people that will lose money there that's not going to show up in consumer pricing. It's going to be investors who will have lost money and will move on and brush off their losses and move on to their next investment. So from a consumer, I mean, clearly you've got to worry about that from an investor point of view, but from a consumer point of view, from a British consumer point of view, that level of overinvestment and overbuild isn't, I don't think, going to leave a long run mark on the network. What the consumer needs in the long run, though, is a choice of network, not a choice of supplier now, a choice of network, because that's what drives real competitive dynamics into the market. You know, you need two different networks to create two different network propositions, so that those networks are properly competing with each other, and that one network provider knows that if they lose that customer, they're going to lose all their revenue, not just a piece of their revenue.
Okay. In terms of then that positive outcomes, that market dynamism, from your point of view, Elsa, what's going to get in the way? What's stopping us from delivering these outcomes to our customers right now?
I think, you know, quite a lot of speakers today, throughout the day, the theme is really about the confusion we've created in the marketplace. This confusion we create as an industry, we brought it upon ourselves, we've doomed our own future, really, by making things very complicated. And I work in telecom industry for all these years, and when I try to explain full fiber to my family, nobody understands. You know, that's just reality, because everything is just making so over sophisticated. And I think what's really standing in the way is we are not being collaborative and innovative enough as an industry. So talk about the cost, talk about all the things that we can do. Really, as an industry, working collaboratively together, we can strip out a lot of costs that currently hinder our growth and speed of acceleration. To really moving away from the defensive and protective mode is when we can start unpacking all this confusion we create, you know, mostly for survival and for protectiveness. If we can move away from this, that's when everybody can thrive, you know, and that's when the full fiber investment, if everybody's pounds go into every corner of the UK and everybody can consume the right technology that is really smooth and easy to take on, and then that's when the true benefit comes. But I think as an industry, we are still working our way around that. I think we'll start realizing we have a responsibility here, and the actions within here to take is the fact, how do we change the faith ourselves? Are we driving ourselves to succeed, or are we driving ourselves to failure because we just confuse the nation, investment pull out, and then the full fiber story is not successful?
That's very clear, thank you. Perhaps from a technology point of view, Ashwini, what are the barriers that are stopping us to progress here?
Let me start with a systemic point of view, Phil, because there seem to be system-oriented challenges, ecosystem challenges. We heard in one of the other panels that clearly way leaves are an issue. We heard that talent is an issue. Fiber supply is an issue. The last one is something that we are hoping to do something about as STL. Given the fact that we've rolled out tens of thousands of kilometers of fiber globally, we have huge installed capacity that we can bring to bear to supply fiber to people who are rolling fiber out. And in fact, we have a role to play as well in training and educating the hundreds of thousands of people, technicians who will need to understand fiber. We heard earlier on in the afternoon, it takes up to 2 years to create a fully trained technician. And you multiply that by the millions of people you need to do that for, you got, you know, a significant size challenge there. Now, technology players such as ourselves have a role to play there in terms of bringing that capability to market. Products have a role to play as well. So when you're talking about speed of deployment, you need efficient products, you need miniaturization, you need things like bend insensitive fibers in all their forms and guises to be able to make sure that you meet the rollout speeds that have been promised. Andy Penn, the CEO of Telstra, said not too far long ago, you can never move fast enough. And we have to understand the systemic challenges that are preventing us from doing so at the moment and learn to solve those together as a community, really, rather than just one company alone, to your point about collaboration earlier.
Yeah, perhaps just to switch then from that to the 5G story and the private wireless talking about earlier, Brendan, in terms of barriers, because you told a very exciting story about some of the use cases that you've already been able to test with key customers, certainly us as Nokia, that we are very passionate about this topic and the impact it can have. What's stopping us from really rolling that out even faster?
I think the thing that's stopping 5G is the investment story doesn't actually add up at this moment in time, because we as an industry are waiting for whatever that silver bullet is, and it goes a bit to the point you made earlier around sometimes you need to build it and they will come, but it's a lot of money to invest, and I think government interventions around things like the shared rural network are beginning to help in this country, but that's taken time. It's the second attempt at a project like that the government's had after MIP. So I think it's about getting the right intervention with the right funding, and then the right ecosystem to be able to have a grown-up conversation about what needs to be done. Because too often I think the politics or the ambitions of individual companies or enterprises come out in those sorts of discussions and they fall away, and it's watered down. And we've seen that a few times with investment. I think the other thing is some of the DCMS funding that's going on is great, but it's too many things at too small an envelope to be able to do anything really tangible with it. So my view would be, if we were to have less projects but with bigger investment, I think we'd start to see more change quicker.
Yeah, I think you and I both talked about collaboration here being critical. I know you touched on it as well, Elsa. I think certainly when we think about how we're going to deploy this, there's no one size fits all, as we touched on. We're going to have to get more engaged between the fibre providers, the neutral host players, the provider for the professional services organisations that could deliver some of the difficult services over the top if we're going to drive this.
If you think about what an enterprise used to ask for from its connectivity provider, it was some landlines, it was some Wi-Fi, it was some broadband, and it was some mobile devices. Now it's looking for a service that delivers an outcome. There isn't anyone who can do that by themselves. It can only come about through collaboration and working together across industries, across partners. It's not possible to do what anybody wants by yourself anymore.
And I think it's a really important point, going back to the cost element. That's why I believe there's a lot of cost in that vertical chain that can be stripped off when you truly collaborate together. This is not just about the putting together a solution, but there's also how we offer a service operating model that is truly with the end customer's interest in heart. And when you really collaborate in that way, I think you realize you can remove quite a lot of duplication and really value add into the end solution that end up maybe a lot cheaper than we operate today.
Yeah, I echo your point, Brendan, about the enterprise piece. When we think about the way they buy WAN services, and we've seen as an industry how commoditized that market's got over the recent years, how much pressure that's put on the telecoms providers. Integrating neutral host solutions, private wireless networks, connectivity to data centers, and telling a story, this is the way we can get value back for our enterprises and for ourselves as an industry, for sure. Conal, actually, just thinking about a government intervention, you saw that successfully in Ireland. Is there more that we could be doing here in the UK on that front, do you think?
On one level there's more, and on another level there's less. I mean, the quantum of investment committed by government feels about right. I'm not a macroeconomist, but it feels like 5 billion is certainly a fair degree of firepower. I think they're going to struggle to put the 5 billion into the market because of the rules of engagement are too complicated. But so I think government commitment to dealing with gaps in the market, and the infrastructure gaps anyway, is probably good. The actual rules of engagement have proved to be complicated. But I think it's beholden upon industry to work with government in a constructive way, and I think most of the people in this room do that. Certain larger operators don't do that out of defensiveness, and that's always going to be a problem. But I don't see a lack of appetite or a lack of commitment from government being a problem. I see a lack of a pathway through all the complicated regulations as being the problem. Okay.
No, I appreciate it. Perhaps to stay with you then. We were touching, I think, and it's been a key topic for today, I think, is the price rises, inflation. What are you seeing that as an impact for you in terms of your strategy and in terms of how you're supporting your customers?
I think it's great. I think, and I say that not from a consumer point. It's terrible. The inflation is terrible for consumers, and it's tough. But I think in an industry where A, you incur your costs now and you incur your revenues far into the future, inflation's good news, and B, where you've got a selfish primary market leader who's always going to take pricing where they can, that's great. So I think our primary competitor, most of us here have the same primary competitor, will not be able to help himself, and they'll take a load of pricing, and that'll just help our pricing advantage, as long as we're disciplined and we don't move our prices up where we don't need to. And at the end of the day, everybody talks about inflation. If you think about operating telecoms network, if you operate a telecoms network that has a 70% margin, 10% cost inflation, is actually less than 3% price inflation pays for it.
Interesting.
Now that's not what other network providers are doing. So their costs are maybe going up. If you look at a large incumbent PLC that owns a telecoms network that operates at about a 60% margin, and it's putting its prices up 10% because it says its costs have gone up 10%, but it only needs 4% to cover the 10%. So it's just gouging. That's all that is.
Elsa, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for us. And to your point, I think for the consumer, it's a really tough situation, and it pushed people to make decisions. In the earlier session, I think we talked about a third of the UK mostly feel their broadband service is okay. We're moving to an era that okay is no longer okay. You know, you really need to count for every pound that you spend, making sure you get the best service, best product, best quality product out there. And I think that's really give full fiber a really good story, okay, or then the newer technology story, an opportunity to really showcase itself. It is a cheaper, better product that actually more fit for purpose for the future. So I think there is an opportunity there for us to really think about how we then take the technology into offering what the customer needs today. The today is the pressure. It is for a better service, better product, at cheaper price.
Yeah, I guess just to challenge a little bit, I think, because when I think about consumers right now, the pressures they're under, I think we as individuals are seeing the price rises, but for certain parts of the UK and the world, actually, this is catastrophic for their budgets. And actually, I think telecoms, certainly in the last decade, has now become, as we know, it's become a right, not a privilege. And it underpins everything they do. Do you think we're doing enough to help our customers here, genuinely, though?
No, the industry's putting the prices up too much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. They're gouging. They're taking advantage of the consumer at the point of consumer weakness. That's what the primary players in the industry are doing. They do not need the price increases that they're taking to cover the cost increases that they're suffering. It's as simple as that.
Okay, that's a pretty clear message, Conal. Thank you. Okay, let's switch topics completely for a second then and talk about skills gap. I mean, we're looking for this, and perhaps we'll come to Brent at this point. We're looking at innovation. We're trying to drive new transformation in the industries. This means that this needs a new set of skill set. We need more people who understand deploying private networks, more people who understand integration. How are we going to get that talent pool right in the UK to take advantage of that technology change?
I think, first of all, we're looking in all the wrong places. We're looking where we've always looked, and therefore we're getting the same skills and the same views and the same ideas. If you look at STEM subjects in the UK, the diversity in STEM subjects is poor. There are not enough females, there's not enough people of colour and different races and different backgrounds who are taking on STEM subjects, and therefore when they come through to whether that be university or whether it be apprenticeships, it's almost like we haven't moved on in time. I think the key for us to close the skills gap is to actually look in different areas for skills and to actually take chances. At BAI, we've taken on our first batch of apprentices, and we didn't go through the normal way of trying to find those apprentices because we'd have just looked where everybody else was looking. So I think that if we're going to truly take on the opportunity that is 5G and private networks and full fibre, then actually we've got to widen our approach to how we look at skills in a way that we haven't done previously.
Do you know, I couldn't agree more. And it's amazing how, and actually I think we're starting to see that in the IT tech industry as a whole. When we think about where we go and get our recruits, often we've gone to the graduate pool. That's the default place to go. And of course, instantly, you are shrinking the skills and experience you're tapping into and missing a huge market of skills and expertise that actually we need to do more with. We need to tap in better, I think, to the apprenticeship levy here in the UK. We don't do enough with that as an industry, in my view. I know there are some challenges with that, for sure, and I think the government could probably do more in that space to help everybody. But yeah, I certainly echo your point. We need a much more diverse population.
There are 13 and 14-year-olds in this country who know how to operate computer operating systems better than most of the people in this room, and we're not tapping into that,
What are you
and we won't
talking
tap it. Because what we'll end up looking for is computer graduates. But there are people who are studying English who understand computers better than I ever will. Like we've got to broaden where we look, not just what we're looking for.
I agree, and I think we should look beyond the actual scale itself, but the quality of this role requires. So one example I'll give is we're installing a lot of customers right now. The installing the labor market is a challenge, building, installing, and we look into hospitality for recruiting our install engineer because that is where the face-to-face customer engagement take place, and hospitality personality is absolutely suited for that engagement environment, and you just train them with the technical skills. So I think there's definitely some creativity can come in here, and that is a great opportunity again to the diversity. That is when you can change the industry slightly, looking different profile.
Also, I think we need to take an end-to-end approach. So quite a lot of that time, the discussion focuses on attracting people in from school, starting at the university level, which is good, but also focus on the people that you have and how can you rapidly upskill them and cross-skill them. Yeah. We have to recognize that there is a certain intense restlessness out there in the workforce at the moment. A lot of people are going to leave. They're going to choose to do their own thing. The quiet quitting or the great resignation, whatever we call it, it is real. It is happening. So we've got to think about the people we have, and we've got to think about the people who have left. How can we get the experienced people who resigned recently or have gone on to do other things? Can we attract some of them back? They have the virtue of experience. They know how to get things done. Can we get them back into this skills gap that we have at the moment?
And it probably wasn't the brightest idea to give up full and free access to a labour market of 300 million people.
I did wonder how long it would be for Brexit to come up, and I think you did well to wait 23 minutes.
I'm not getting dragged down that rabbit hole, I'm afraid. Actually, we've done pretty well at getting through, and I think we've got a bit of time left. So are we able to do a question from the audience? Is that possible in a bit of a kind of a last-minute change of pace? So I don't know. I'm happy to take. I think we're happy to take a question if someone has one. There's straight away one at the back of the room. So yeah, please stand up. Let us know your name, and please make it a nice question, an easy question.
Hi, good afternoon and almost evening. Andrew Ferguson from Think Broadband. Just hopefully a very short couple of words from the panel. Do you think Project Gigabit is perhaps actually holding back the adoption of full fibre, the name? Because the public see it as been, I don't need gigabit, why do I need gigabit speeds? So they're thinking, I don't want to pay the £55, £60 a month that everyone's selling gigabit at. When actually, us as an industry, we want them just to buy full fibre, even if it's the entry-level 20 meg package at $19.99 a month. That gets them onto the ladder. We've got them locked in. What does the panel think?
Should I go first? I think it's a really good question. I think I wouldn't comment on the project itself, whether it is holding back, but I think, generally speaking, we talked about confusion before. We're trying to sell technology to the customer with a different spin of how we describe our technology. I think fundamentally, into the full fiber services, it is a more reliable, a future-proof product that if at no increased cost to you, is a complete no-brainer for the consumer to switch. One of the sessions I was talking about before, I believe full fiber adoption should be as easy as a software upgrade on your phone. It should be made available to you when it's available, and you just believe that it's actually better service, and only choice you have to make is when it's convenient for me to download it, when it's convenient for me to have the upgrade happen. Now, the gigabit or speed or different way we used to describe it, you are right, it can potentially create confusion, but I guess it's the scenario we're in today. And I think the way for us to unpack this for the consumer is to move away from describing the technology, really talk about the benefit. For me, the full fiber is install once for life. And that's all you need to know about, is a better technology, and if at no increased cost to you, it should be a no-brainer for you to go for it.
Listen, our industry is institutionally terrible at marketing its product to consumers. I previously worked for Procter & Gamble, which sells soap powder, and I would always say that if we sold aerial the way we sell broadband, all those aerial ads would talk about surfactants, you know, and the technology that's in aerial rather than the benefit of aerial. And it's I don't think that we can blame government for calling a government subsidy program Project Gigabit for us not being able to stimulate demand for a great product that does great service for customers. That's our own problem as an industry, of not being able to market to our own consumers properly.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that point. Okay, another question from the audience, perhaps? Oh, we've got certainly one over there, I think.
Panel is called How to Deliver Truly Positive Outcomes for People. I wonder if any on the panel has got views about what's going to happen this winter with rising energy bill for networks. Are they going to skyrocket, and is there a risk that the cost is passed on to consumers?
I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. So energy, but I guess here specifically energy piece. What does that mean for the OPEX of operators? I think we know the answer to this. Not good, but go on, Conal.
I mean, it isn't good, but everybody's living off marginal business cases. But if you look at built net, the telecoms industry, once the network is built, operates off a 70% margin. So we should be able to suffer cost increases.
Okay, that was a short answer to that question. Perhaps I would comment, I think there's more from a technology point of view we can do in this space though as well. Yeah. I think we could take advantage of things like liquid cooling, certainly in the RAN space where that accounts for a majority of certainly mobile operators' network bills from an energy point of view, and there's more we can do there. We're doing some quite interesting work on this space where actually using liquid cooling, obviously when the liquid is then warmed, can we then use that heated water as an energy asset and start to sell that back into the network? And I think when we, as a UK, we are not doing enough, in my view, in this space in linking it with the energy sector. The next round of Rio funding is coming. There's going to be huge build out in cities across the UK as they need to get more connectivity out to allow things like microgeneration and solar panels and so forth, which of course anybody who has got a bit of spare cash is trying to invest in buying one at the moment. I think the telecoms industry, energy industry are not well enough linked in this space right now. There's a lot more we could do there for sure. Okay, probably got a chance for one last question. Chap in the back there, I think.
Hi, I'm Paul Ramsey from Global Reach Technology. We talk a lot about technical innovation. I wondered, I see commercial innovation as equally as important. I wondered if there was any examples or if the panel got any view on commercial innovation as well as technical.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you kind of touched on it, Brendan, a little bit in one of the answers. Perhaps I could point that at you to start with.
I think what Conal said earlier on is having more than one network's really important, but that they don't have to be two completely separate networks. There can be points where it's the same infrastructure providing service, but if you just had one network in the UK or in Ireland, that wouldn't necessarily drive innovation. What we're doing from a neutral host point of view is taking really difficult builds, whether that be transit, whether that be rural, and building them once so they're efficient for the operators who want to join. I think that's a commercial innovation. I think that the second part of that is when we look at private networks, the ability to be able to bring different parties together and provide one service under one umbrella rather than, going and getting an SI and a vendor and being able to pull that together and provide one unique service, even though there might be 7 or 8 different parties working on it, is another commercial innovation that we've been working on over the last couple of years.
I'd echo that last one, and I'd take it to another step further, that actually we need to think about providing commercial models based on outcomes. That actually we aren't delivering you pay a monthly fee and we'll just deliver a service. No. We're going to have an impact on the manufacturing plant's efficiency or its output. Or in fact, we talked about earlier with the agriculture, perhaps we can talk about yield. And actually we need to get much more innovative with those models if we're really going to capture the value of what 5G and these private networks mean. I think that's a good time to pause.